How's your family? Tell us about your family.
Well, of course, I'm sure you know who my dad is, and he's 87. He's well. He's good. He's the only Alabamian to ever serve as governor as a Republican and a Democrat. And he's good. And my mom is still alive. She's also, her health, she's got terrible dementia, but they're well. And I'm married I met my wife as a freshman at Auburn, and we've been married 38 years. We have 3 children, adult children, all married, and we got 3 grandbaby boys that are the joy of our life. You know how it is. These grandbabies. Thank God. We're so blessed that I don't have to raise them. You give them back. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But
Unless they move back home with you like mine did.
right.
Then you gotta raise them too.
That's right. So, no, that's right. So,
I got a question. It almost seems cliche as whenever a politician says God called them to do this thing.
I know. I agree.
I know, I'm not saying that yours is, but can you kind of elaborate on what you actually mean, especially since the standpoint you are from a family with a politician, so it's kind of like in the family lineage.
Right.
So what made the shift now, or the shift to be in politics?
So that gives it why I'm here. You may remember I ran for governor in 2010 and missed that runoff by 158 votes. And that race was me, Bradley Byrne, Dr. Bentley, and Roy. And Bentley nipped me by 158 votes, which is hard to believe. How do you lose a race by 158 votes, Bishop? I did. I figured out how. And went on about my business, my life. No fun to lose. I believe it's worse to lose by 158 than 158,000. And my children, girl, boy, girl, at that point, my son was married in the middle. And so over those next half a decade, the 2 daughters got married. And we started a company in 2017, early 18. And the Lord moved on my family. And the Lord said, you're in an Isaiah 22:22 moment. That's the keys of David. For on his shoulders rest the keys of David. The doors that God opens, no man can close. And the doors that God closes, no man can open. And it also is reflected in Revelation 3. Well, we named this company 2222 Corporation. And I thought, okay, Lord, you are moving my family into an arena to build bridges, literally, all over the Southeast, private infrastructure. And you're going to bless it so that we might serve the kingdom of God. And that was it. And that's why, and so we named this company, this holding company, and so the twos we see, I walk in the Spirit, I'm Spirit-filled. And that was that, and we were going on about our business, and then it gets crazy. So about a year ago, so we're 2.5 years into this family business, we're working our fannies off, and the Lord began to speak to me about about politics, and I never thought about it. I just never dreamed that I would even remotely think about it. And I told Angela, I said, honey, poor Bill's got to hear this again. He's heard this before, but I think the Lord intends us to think about politics, this thing. And she said, you're crazy. You find yourself another wife. But we understand obedience, and I said, well, Lord, you're going to have to do it because I can't do it. I don't have I've done it. I'm way past wanting to be governor. I thought I was done. And so over the course of about 6 months or 7 months, the Lord began to move on my family, literally. Because remember, we've been there. We get it. It's not like we don't know how to know illusion. And I began to see very clearly. Now, even prior to that, 2 years back, in 2017, 18, the Lord began to tell me, He says, Alabama's going to lead the nation. And I tell Angela, I said, honey, I'm telling you, Alabama, the Lord's telling me, we are going to lead the nation. And of course, we start this company, and I'm thinking, okay, Lord, you know, we're going to just be a part of revival, which is happening, which is now beginning to happen in the nation, I believe. And so 2 years before that revelation, that was happening 2 years prior to the even inkling of a political thought in my brain of the movements, like the Lord just kept me away from it, and it just began to move. And so, y'all want to hear these details or not?
Yeah, we got it.
Sure, you do? I mean, I don't mean to get all long-winded. And so we're in this, so then one day, this would have been in June, I get a phone call, I'm driving Mobile. And I didn't answer it because I didn't recognize the call. Anyway, it was a lady, and some of you may know Suzelle Josie. She was Judge Moore's one of her top guys. And she left me a message to call her back. And I hadn't talked to Suzelle at least in 7 years. I don't know how long it was. And so I called her back. And I remember this very clearly. And so what I'm going to tell you, I'm sure you know, and I don't even know anything about you, really, other than I picked up the Spirit of God all over you when I was watching in Alveda as well. And you know, I pick up these things. And so I know you're a big dog, but I really don't know you. And so I called Suzelle back, and she says, Tim, I had a dream about you and Angela. And, you know, I tried to call you, she says, I tried to call you 2 years ago, you never returned my call. I don't know. She said, but I called Dottie Parker, and that's Tom Parker's wife. The Chief Justice's wife is my cousin. Her name is Dottie James Parker. She's my dad's first cousin. I mean, so we're close. And told her the dream, and Dottie says, well, you got to call Tim and tell him yourself. And well, he wouldn't call me back last time. It was that kind of crazy stuff. But anyway, so she called, and I said, well, so she said, I had a dream, and she said, I'm delivering the dream. You can take it or leave it, but I'm doing what God told me to do. After that's between you and God. And I said, all right. So I'm driving down the road going to Mobile, and she says, I was in your bedroom, and you and Angela were sleeping. You were under the covers. And I was watching y'all sleep, and all of a sudden you pull the covers back, and you step out of the bed, and you're in a full business suit. And you look back at Angela, and you said something like, I have to do this, and you said, I know you do. And then she began to interpret the dream, and she said, the Lord said that I've been preparing you. You've been in the wilderness, which I have, very hard for a decade or so. But now I am bringing you out of the wilderness for such a time as this. And so that's the first encounter, other than just preliminary thought about this. And so we rock on through the year, and as I began to really digest what the Lord had said about leading the nation, and then even Isaiah 22, what it really is about is that it's operating at multiple levels. But the root of Isaiah 22 is governmental anointing. It's the Davidic anointing. It's about government first and foremost because it's David. And then it became very clear that this was about doing what God's called in government. And it's very clear, the Lord gave me a very clear understanding that it is Alabama that is going to lead the nation and the revival is going forth from this land. And then I had the ultimate confirmation on Pentecost last year also. I was driving to Shreveport, Louisiana, which is a very interesting place spiritually, and Chuck Pierce, if you know what I'm talking about, Chuck was at Kid Max's church, Pentecost Sunday, and I'm driving down the road, and I was listening, and Chuck began to reveal a dream that he had back in '08 that I'd never heard before. He had revealed it, but I didn't know. And he began to prophesy and speak exactly, almost word for word, what the Lord had showed me. He says, Alabama is going to lead the nation. That was the word that I have kept using for years. And so it became very clear to me that I was where we were thinking, we were in alignment with what God's saying and intending at this point. And so the confirmations kept coming. So as a family, at the end of the year, we get together, and it's really crazy to think that I really didn't even get in this race until December. Just this past, this thing's only been going on 3 or 4 months. How do you do this? How do you raise $3 million in a couple of months? And it's just the provision has been crazy. It's been like that. So that's how I got here. And it'll be, obedience. The safest place is in obedience with God. And if we get out of that, that's where we get ourselves in trouble. And so now it's getting clear. The clarity has been coming in much better. And the velocity of what God's saying is faster and clearer. I've never seen this. I've never seen velocity of revelation like it's happening now. God is moving. And revival we're on the cusp of revival in the nation. And it is going to go forth from this land that we stand on right now. God, it has been spoken. And so then it finally, it all came out, this whole 22, and we laugh. We don't even pay attention to the twos that we see now. You see them in everything. I see them in numbers and dreams and all this stuff. So that's why I'm here. Now, to answer your question, I don't know why, in part it's because of my family, I guess, but the issues in the nation, God has given me a deep, not just a carnal understanding constitutionally of what has happened to the nation and why it's happened at a much deeper level. And it's kind of weird that my family has discussed constitutional questions at a much deeper level for 40 years as just in due course. And I look back on my life, and it was a preparation to find ourselves in this exact moment in time when the nation really is hanging in the balance for many reasons. And we know that our battle is we're not battling flesh with bad principalities, and understand what we're really up against and what we're dealing with. And we have to occupy as a governor. And I will answer your question this way. I see being governor is different now than it's ever been. Really, well, at least not since the foundation of the nation. I see it at 2 levels. I see this overarching issue, the cultural war, the battles that are raging in the heavens and in amongst the nation. And then you have your internal stuff in Alabama that a governor deals with every day. And the first top issue is going to be education, because we're failing miserably at K through 12. And so the internal stuff inside this state that a governor will deal with, that would be number one by far. And we know how to deal with it. I understand it pretty darn well, I think. It will be tremendous conflict to get the system of government, the structure. I mean, it's strongholds. The strongholds have to come down. So that's something. And that have set themselves up. They do not care about children. They care about themselves and the structure of government, and the structure of the bureaucracies. That's their God. That's their God. And so I get, that's part of it. So that's the top issue. That 87 cents on every tax dollar that you pay, that we all pay, goes into public education. And now we're dead last. And to put it in context, when Bob Riley was going in the early 2000s, we were 39th in reading, 27th in math, and now we're 50th. It's humiliating. So, that's a big deal. But the bigger deal is the spiritual battle and the cultural war that's being waged in the nation right now. And that's the one. That's the big one. And so governors historically, except at the foundation of the nation, really have been very tunnel vision inside their states and the issues of the day. And governors now are stepping into this true authority that they have. It's a constitutional authority on the bigger stage, because we do have a very clear constitution. We have a separation of powers between the federal government, the state government, and the branches of it. And if you ask me what's happened to this nation, real quick, I'll tell you. This is my opinion. A nation, George Washington warned us in his first inaugural address. He says, if this nation turns its back on God, God will remove the smiles of heaven, the blessing, the hedge, right? So it's not hard to get. And Satan attacks, of course, always the first line of attack is either children or the character and the nature of God. That's his job, right? He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. Well, in 1962, you wake up one day and the Supreme Court removes prayer from schools. Boom, like that. In a case called Vitale versus England. And so all of a sudden you're removing prayer, you're removing this hedge, the shield of protection in our public schools, unconstitutionally. That's a state question. It's not even a question. They don't even argue anymore that they usurped it. Each state should adjudicate that or determine voluntary prayer as they see fit. That's what the Constitution says. Roy Moore will tell you the same thing, I promise. Then came Roe. Same thing. They usurped the Constitution, federalized something that is reserved to the states, and y'all know that story. Then again, in 2016, in Obergefell, same thing. They just wake up one day out of the blue, after 4,000 years of history, and say, we're going to redefine marriage. And so now they're after the character of God. So now what's Satan doing? Satan is attacking our children first. The sanctity of life, God's creation. It's all the same, Bishop. It's the same patterns. And that's where we find ourselves today. Except now we've gone through this pandemic, scared everybody to death, because at first you didn't know what it was, but I'm doing all the talking. I didn't mean to ramble on, but
I was going to add something though, that the decision, Vitale in 1962 was based on an earlier precedent, which is in 1947.
which one?
I forget the name. Is when the state of New Jersey was going to allow the kids from Catholic schools to ride the public school buses to school, and then a second decision in 48 to allow them to have public school textbooks in non-religious areas.
Right.
And it was a judge from Alabama who introduced the principle of separation of church and state into those two decisions. And I think that's the prior issue that that made precedent for Vitale, that the separation of church and state was Emerson.
Everson.
Everson.
That's right. That was the construction of the tally.
Yep.
It's all flawed.
And exactly.
The whole,
But-
everything is flawed.
But see, this connects with what you said about revival coming in. This downfall in these principles started from Alabama.
Yes.
And the federal courthouse is named after him. That was Hugo Black.
Hugo Black. He said we're gonna, so what and it's more, it's even better than that. And this came to me, it's funny you mentioned this, Hugo, because this came to me in my sleep last night. Lord must have known we were gonna talk about this. So Hugo Black said, and this is the lie, and this is the great lie around this issue. After the Civil War, we passed the due process laws, the 14th Amendment, okay, which basically what due process means is the due process. If you get arrested, you got a right to a trial by jury. That's what due process means, those sorts of things. Okay, I can't take your land without paying you, just standard stuff. That's due process. Due process has nothing to do with school prayer. Due process has nothing to do with abortion. Due process, those are state questions. So what Hugo Black said in those cases, he said, we are going to use the 14th Amendment as our quote, this was Black's words, as our wild card. In other words, what he was saying, we're going to step into any question without regard of anything, and we're going to rule and we're going to define these things. And that's how it happened. So they used the 14th, they applied the 14th Amendment on these issues to the states so that they could shut prayer down in public schools, so that they could kill unborn babies, and that they could redefine marriage. That's how it happened.
Yep.
And see, Black, at least he was honest enough to be open about it and said, in other words, this is what, it's not true, but this is going to be the wild card that we're going to use to allow abortion. And that's what happened.
And, he was the defense lawyer for the Methodist minister that killed the priest downtown.
Yeah.
And in the same year that he did that defense, he also wrote a law for the state of Oregon to make Catholic schools illegal in that state. Now, it only lasted 2 years because Supreme Court knocked that down in 24. But there's the anti-religious element that was in him and came out in a number of ways, affected the nation. And, I think that it is important for us to see that we have to be the Lord's instruments to undo the evil he did. And of course, he was a leader in the Ku Klux Klan at the time, in the 20s and 30s. That adding to the evil, it was more than anti-religious, a racist component to what he did as well. And I think this may be part of the attitude we have to say, some of this evil that is permeated at not just a superficial law here or there, but at a profound level, in changing the structure of the way the Supreme Court has gone, that we can be maybe part of the Lord's instrument to undo that.
One of the things that's been critical to me, when I first started in ministry, I felt it was wrong to take prayer out of school. My attorney was supposed to be here because I told him years ago I wanted to be involved in some kind of way to get prayer back in schools. And an issue that, when you talk about revival, who is the prophet that was here in the 80s, late 80s and 90s, said that revival would begin for this nation and the world, indeed, would begin in the state of Alabama? Do you all remember who that, it was?
Several people did. Dr. Young Cho even said that.
That's the Korean guy. Yeah.
He had in a dream, he saw the revival worldwide.
Who was that?
Dr. Young Cho, he pastored the largest church in the world. And in a dream, he saw.
So?
So, and so,
Billy Kim?
Yeah, he literally said, God showed him a dream
Right.
that all the worldwide end revival would start in Alabama,
Right.
around the world.
And what I believe, Tim, is this, and what this group has come together. Notice the makeup of what this group is. It's a diverse group of pastors. We came together. When we first came together, we had to deal with some of the challenges that were black-white challenges. In fact, we discuss issues very openly, and we've learned to develop a love among ourselves for one another. We joke and we kid with one another. But in our first few meetings, we've had challenges, and we've overcome those challenges. It is my belief that Christ can bring us together. It is my belief that from the state of Alabama, where was the heart of Dixie, that we can show this nation how this racial divide, how we can come together. This brother right over here, one just recently came in, is Michael McClure, Senior. His family is of the Woods family, the Abraham Woods, Calvin Woods, marched in the 60s, and Calvin Woods is one of that helped integrate the businesses downtown.
I played football. Chris Woods and I were,
Chris Woods?
Chris and I were both freshmen together at Auburn University. We were same signing class.
Did you know Chris was a member of this church for almost 15, 20 years?
But he's my brother.
He's your brother.
He's my brother.
Wow. And so that's his family there.
I know.
And so when we first get together, this brother brings up when, because we were talking about Trump's coming in, he says he gets kind of outrageous from time to time. We call him the cat because he has to always come in late, and he has to announce his presence by something.
That's called fashionably late. Right?
But what he did, he said, set up in here, tapped on the table to some of my other brothers here. I want to know what y'all mean by taking back America, making America great again. Is that what y'all talking about? Want to put us in slaves? And then these other brothers, especially this one right here, where you come from? Where I'm from? I just want to know, is that what y'all up to? and I'm sitting back like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Let me see if I can keep order here. Then we get one of the black legislators come in talking about abortion and the right for abortion, and how the mother has to have a right to choose, and the black legislator, the mother has to have a right to choose, because that's what's good for that mother. And you got to think about the mother, because the child comes in unwanted, and the mother has to have a choice. This one right over here,
Goes crazy.
the priest over here, is sitting down, gets up.
The young
That
man.
baby had no choice, and I'm letting
I could have seen that coming.
Oh, yeah.
And then McClure over there sitting down watching him go through his beads, and he's just saying the little beads, rosary beads were going like this when she first started talking. Then after a while, she got shit going like this. So basically, what I want to say, all that to come right back around to the fact that I believe that what we have, a core of people, we have brought folk together here. And we have other pastors that are involved. Now, not everyone, we've had folk pastors that have left us because they didn't quite understand. Others busy because of other things. But we believe in this revival. We believe that politically we have a responsibility, as Nehemiah had to go before the nobles and the rulers and put them in order. Someone has to speak for the kingdom of God. And so we've tried to bring people in, we've talked to them, and we try to keep our influence with people such as your status. And when you mentioned your family, I thought about that. I said, okay, so we have political, we have the nobles also. And I've looked over your record, I've looked at things you've seen, that's why I wanted you to meet them. And we want to deal with some issues that are going on here. I got some questions I want to ask you. But before I do, if there's any others, you all go ahead. Mike?
First of all, forgive me for my tardiness.
No, this Kane, we recognize
I'm
Kane.
walking out the door, and this is no joke, get on my bike, and the Geek Squad from
Best Buy.
Best Buy pull up to fix my home theater. Why they want to show up now, I don't know, I've been waiting forever. So I have to let them do what they do.
Well, some people have opportunity to have that type of stuff in their home, and we do appreciate that. And praise
Well, I have
God.
good white friends. I got 3 good white guys with good credit. So you made a statement, I'm kind of, I would like that answer too. You talked about the young lady that was going to Supreme Court, Ms. Brown. Say it again.
Katanji Brown.
Katanji, yeah.
This lady. And you kind of alluded to that she's a bad choice. And I'm just wondering what's your...
The Supreme Court nominated,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
because they asked her a question, can you define a woman?
Can you define a woman? If I
Yeah,
brought a room full of black women in this room, could you give a definition that would please them as to what a woman is?
yeah.
I think you missed the point. I don't think she was saying she couldn't give a definition of what a woman is. I felt like she was recognizing the fact that the guy that asked the question was being facetious,
It was a lady that asked the question.
or whoever asked the question. I had probably been smoking CBD.
That, I took it to say that she was standing on the world, the demonic forces of this, you know, this whole transgender thing. This is a antichrist spirit. That's all it is. All we're looking at is an antichrist spirit ramming its way into our lives.
Absolutely.
I took it exactly that. And if I missed it, then I'll seek God and I'll beg for forgiveness. But that's what
I like that answer.
That's
I
what
want to know
said.
what your perspective was
That was it.
in making that choice.
No, if you ask me, can I define, what was the question? Can you define a man or a woman? Or can you define a woman? Yeah, that's one right, that's one, and there's another one right there.
Right.
Can you define a man? Well, here's one here, and there's one there. I mean, that's the answer. And there is no other answer. And so by answering that way, what I'm seeing is exactly what I think it was, which is an antichrist spirit coming out in an exchange, in a moment.
So you would stand against this new school that's about to, has it opened yet? Here?
I understand it's open, the Acceptance Academy right here in Birmingham.
Y'all been?
First
Y'all don't
one in
watch
the country, I
television.
think.
I haven't had
The second
The
one in the
South.
country.
Second one in the country, first one in the South.
Bill, play that ad. Y'all don't
Have y'all
watch.
heard it?
I've heard
I don't watch a lot of TV, to be honest with
What I
you.
want to do is,
Play the radio.
I'm gonna play the radio,
It's great.
because it's got a little bit.
You guys are not aware of this? It's happening in our city.
Yeah.
The mayor
It's the shut-
promoted this.
You do know while this is going on, they're now stopping, was it Clay Chapel or one of the high schools right here?
Pinson and Gardner.
Intensive from praying during their games and all that?
Yeah, they just did that. Uh-huh.
Y'all want to listen? to
And then they're gonna give this thing free reign.
Right.
Listen, this is a 60-second radio ad, pulling it up right now. I think, don't have much of a signal here, there we go, I think I got it.
You have a signal to God right here.
Stop, bro.
Tim James, governor. The culture war has come to Alabama. Parents, grandparents, are you watching? There's a war going on between common sense and crazy. Tim James. A Supreme Court nominee who can't even tell you what a woman is. The best woman swimmer is actually a man. And recently, the first transgender public school in the South, chartered in Alabama with millions of your tax dollars. It's called the Magic City Acceptance Academy. And recently, the faculty put on a drag show on campus for the children. It's heartbreaking. It's not education. It's exploitation. It's got to stop. Tim James, governor. What are we doing to our kids? Who let this happen? I'm Tim James. That's enough. It's time to fight back. Paid for by Tim
That
James,
answer your
governor,
question, as
2022.
who I am?
Yes, sir.
You said the female swimmers or?
He's a man.
So, man,
That dude, that lady that's winning all those swim meets is a male.
Yeah, when he was competing with the men, he was like 500 ranked among men, but now he's number one among women.
So, these strongholds are coming down. God's bringing them down in preparation for revival that's going forth from this land right here.
Well, now, let me ask you a question. Someone else have no question?
I do have a question.
Go ahead, man, because I got plenty.
Yeah, I know you got a list, Bishop. So, with your reasoning for going, of course, you said because God knows you and all this, and it sounds very profound, and I appreciate it. My question is, I guess, hypothetically, if you don't become governor, and with so much going on that you have such a call to stop, where do you fight from there? Because we hear so many people say, hey, God called me to do this, and then when they don't.
No. God has not said you're gonna win. Okay? He called me to run. So all this is about is obedience. I gotta obey.
Yeah.
If I think I'm gonna win.
Gotcha.
Okay, I think we're gonna win the race. Not by strength nor might, but by His Spirit. I have nothing to do with it. I just get up in the morning, kind of go about my business, and the doors just crack open. But God has not said, Tim, you're gonna win this race. He said, you're to run. You're to do this. And if I don't win, then I'll say, well, Lord, my wife was so, thank you, Lord. You gave us a pardon. That's why there's no pressure. But Bill, and my dear friend Bill Armistead, you know, for a while they drive him crazy. I said, this is easy. Easy. Because his yoke is easy, right? His burden is light. And I've done it before, and I've been in governor's races, tangled up and knotted up for months, and we just get up in the morning and do what the Lord, try to do what the Lord tells us to do, and to hear Him. And that's what we do. And so, and I tell you, how in the world we have this money? Let me tell you about the money that we've raised. If you ran down the list, none of the money that's come in is from typical, well, one or two, but for the most part, the political people. It's come from places that you could have never imagined. I mean, and what's happening, God is calling people, God, His servants, wealthy people and they don't even know it. And they just, this $100,000 into this campaign. I've told myself, well, you're not giving the money to me. You know, I'm just a vessel. That's all I am. I'm just doing what the Lord's, and so it really is like that. And I mean, Bill will tell you, I mean, I've never seen, I mean, whether I win, whether I lose, remains to be seen. But we're doing what we're called to do. And this Magic City thing, this is the most demonic thing that I've ever seen in my lifetime. These children, they're abusing these children like we've never seen before. It's abuse.
I guarantee you that within a year, 2 years, the number of sex abuse cases against those kids is going to increase, and that'll be its Achilles heel.
Well, I can promise you, if I win this primary, it's over. I mean, well, you got to win the general election too. But if I'm a governor, it's done. It's over. I'll shut it down.
What can be done to shut it down?
Oh, it's easy. It's easy. Defund. Don't veto the budget. All the governor had to do was say, y'all take it out, I'm gonna veto your budget. She didn't do it. We need to, so the charter school thing, I'm for charter schools. Nothing's wrong with charter schools. Okay, you can have a charter school, math and science, or history and all these things. So they made a mistake when they created charter school law, and then the way it works is they created a charter school commission, and they grant the charters. It sounds okay. And the governor appoints 4 people, and the lieutenant governor is 1, and so you got all these appointees. Well, no one ever thought that they would do something like this, right? So they did. And so there was a guy named Bice who was the state board, president of the State Board of Education, who turned out to be a gay dude. Left his wife, married his boyfriend, whatever. And he's the one who started this, he was the founder, one of them, of this whole thing. It's all set up, I think, now. So how do you fix it? We need to totally and completely reverse the law, and this commission needs to go away. And charter schools the charter should be granted by the State Board of Education, which are elected. It's 8, they're elected people. The governor is the chairman, and the governor has a vote. So now, if there's a charter school, elected people are making the decision, and the governor. And you can't hide it under a veil of this commission that nobody ever heard of. And that's what they were able to do.
I agree, because the dollar follows the child.
Right.
So I
That's what you should do. And this whole thing around school choice is great. I hate having the word choice, because you know why, but the dollar, we want school choice, which means every parent in every school can, and if they want to snatch their child out of that school and put them in any other public school that has an opening, they get a voucher, which is the equivalent that goes to that child. They can go to any other public school, any private school with no strings attached, any charter school, and homeschool, no strings. That's what I'm for. Let her roll. And all of a sudden what happens is those schools, moms and dads start snatching them out. They start going crazy, you know, and you just start. I want to grind them in the ground and put them in a vice grip, expose them.
And the other thing too, along the same lines what I said about this new school, that applies to the teachers. Do you remember, what is it, about 3 years ago, that there was a bill in the State House to require all teachers to have 1 hour a year to learn about proper boundaries, sexual boundaries between students and faculty and administration. And the teachers union got it stopped. There's a reason they did. You know, when we priests had this terrible scandal that came from 3% of Catholic priests. 97% didn't. But at the same time, in the public schools, it was 9.4% were engaged in sexual abuse.
Yeah.
And now, it's gone up to closer to 14% nationwide. And the unions are preventing prosecution and expulsion from the profession.
Right.
And if there's something that is needed to be done, it's putting a stop to that. And just in the 1990s, 290,000 children were abused in the public schools. And in 52 years of looking at Catholic clergy, it was 11,000. Now, you would never guess that from the news coverage. Never guess it. But it is a tiny fraction of what's going on in the public schools. And this is their Achilles heel. If somebody will let the law be pressed to deal with these cases, it's rampant. And interesting enough, 52% of the abusers are the women teachers.
Really?
I was gonna say something too. My daughter, my oldest daughter, ever since she was 9 and 10 years old, all she dreamed to do is to be a teacher. And she wanted to teach children. That's all I heard about my whole life. And she went to college, she became a teacher, loved it, was fulfilling her life. In the last 2 years of her life, of her teaching career, she has become absolutely miserable and fighting depression, finding out that in this good school system, teachers in her grade, she teaches second grade, were literally so stressed out because of not just what's coming down from the teachers' unions, but things that are happening in the behavioral problems with the kids, and they can't have any authority to do anything. That literally teachers were offering her drugs, offering her anxiety medicine, finding out that everybody in the entire grade has to take anxiety medicine just to teach. And people that had, so long story short, my daughter came to me about 3 months ago and told me, Dad, I talked to my husband about it and I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Wow. So she is literally resigning from teaching because she cannot live this life as a teacher in the state of Alabama. I can't imagine what it's like in some of these other states that you hear about. And broke my heart for her because that was her whole life dream. And she said when she resigned to her principal, who was getting ready to retire next year, in 20-something years as a teacher, that lady said to my daughter, I envy you. If I did not have 1 or 2 years left to my retirement, I would follow your lead. She said, because me and all my friends, we went into teaching. Teaching used to be fun. It used to be exciting. It used to feel like we were making a difference. She said, it has become one of the most miserable lives that I ever dreamed of me. That's the life of a teacher in the state of Alabama. And I said, I know that's not a question, but that's on the top of the
I hear it every day. I hear it
It's
every day.
heartbreaking. And then you factor in all of the other stuff, the social stuff, the cultural stuff, the demonic stuff that's being put on our children. And right in the middle of it is a teacher. And they have to handle all of that. And the kids and the teachers together, it's just, as you said earlier, it's what the enemy does. He first goes after the children.
Every time.
And one other thing I want to say to you is, I feel like if the pandemic showed us anything, it showed us what you started off by saying, the power of a governor. I mean, you look at all these different states, how they reacted to the pandemic versus, you got one state that you can't do nothing. You go right across the border and you're free. And then you got one state that's pro-abortion and putting it in their constitution now to protect the baby, to abort a baby all the way up to birth. That's what Colorado did just this week in their state constitution. And then right next to it, the state borders them, put in their constitution that abortion was illegal. So it's like, it's showing for all these years, governors and states have just sat back and just followed like little sheep when we're supposed to be the United States of America. And I think that's why it's very important for Alabama to have a very strong pro-life, pro-family, constitutional governor that can preemptive put some laws into place that protect some of this stuff that's coming down from Washington.
So,
I agree.
I mean, that wasn't a question. I was just saying, I
No, that's
appreciate
correct.
your heart. I believe
It's
that's your
correct,
heart.
and it's constitutionally correct, is that these issues are state questions, all of them. And sure, some states will go the wrong way, but that's what the Constitution says, and that is it. And it's been usurped, and this is what you get when it's allowed to stand.
Yes.
Tim, as governor, do you have a position on the 17th Amendment? Would you push for a repeal of that? That's the one that took the vote for senators out of the state legislature and gave it to the popular vote, which then lessens the influence of the state in the federal government.
No, I support a popular vote for the U.S. Senate. In each state, as opposed to out of the legislature.
Yeah, prior it was out of the
So
legislature.
the parliamentary process.
Which meant that if your senator.
I have more confidence in the voters at large than I do the Alabama legislature, I can tell you that.
Well, the impact seems to me that as governor, if your senator is not voting at that federal level, your values as a state, you can recall him. The state legislature could recall him and put someone in there who's going to represent your state. As it is now, they're voted by the people, but now there's no answer back to the state or even answer to those people.
For 6 years.
Yeah.
But it would require a constitutional amendment, which means you have to then, that's a considerable amount of time taken to do that, though.
Right.
I don't think, but there's no
But-
state in the country that does that. That's a parliamentary procedure. That's what England does, Israel. You know, basically, the prime minister is chosen by, you know, the parties. You know, you have the Labour and the Likud party.
But he's suggesting, I guess, a repeal of the 17th Amendment in order for that to happen, which would be a difficult thing, I think, at our current time. I think, Pastor Mike,
I
was
got a question, because let me say this, Tim, I thank you for the spirit that you bring in, really refreshing from a political standpoint. However, with the wake of transgender and homosexuality being so prevalent, not only in America, but actually in our hometown, and also within our government arena, like, if anybody's watching, it is more politicians who are on the other side, secretly and publicly. My question to you is, with them being in power and you going to make this stance, is a very hard fight that you'll have to take on. And also knowing that, I think in 1979, the DSMV, they removed homosexuality as being a mental illness. So, and if you look at the DSMV, it says they do not have sufficient evidence to prove that it is not a mental illness, but it has been suggested to remove it. They have gained a lot of power,
No doubt.
within the government and over our city and country, and even our children, as we're all seeing now. What you have to do, you have to gather forces with people who are against what you're standing for. My question is, just that I'm with you, but like, how do you do it when you're going into the lion's den and you are the one that's saying no?
Well, I think that's where Alabama comes in. As I guess I said, that this is, and I'm just speaking wearing a spiritual hat. God's not done with America. And governors now are much, you know, and DeSantis is sort of the first. But governors are going to play a different sort of role. And governors are going to begin to stand together as one, as a body, which is what it was intended. We're a confederation of states. And you have good folks running. You got Sarah Huckabee in Arkansas, I think, is a good gal, tougher than her daddy, I think. And so I just think God's raising up people, and I may be a part of that. And all of a sudden you get multiple governors. But where it really gets interesting, and I think this is what you're going to see. The reason, this is the way I believe the Lord has shown it to me. I mean, everybody, you don't even have to be me spiritually. People that are much, less sensitive. I can speak to 200 or 300 people, and everybody is not who I am, but they're all nodding. And so what's happening is they're hearing, the Lord is revealing truth to them, and they're sensing the moment in the time. And that's what the seed of revival looks like, I think. And it's really, I don't even think about it, to be honest, because only the Lord can do it. But I think He is doing it. And I think you're going to see, as Alabama's going to lead and begin, these issues that we're wrestling with now are going to be fixed. This is going to get fixed. And then the shaking, I expect, is going to continue. And other states, because it's so in our face, everything. Other states, just like we sort of look at, people talk about DeSantis. I mean, DeSantis didn't shut everything down. He said, you're not going to do it, right? All of a sudden, other states are going to begin to look at Alabama, and we're going to stand for righteousness, in alignment with what is righteous. And I'm prophesying, I'm telling you, this is what the Lord has shown me, whether I laid it or not. And other states are going to see this, and they follow. And that's what I think we're going to see in the years ahead. But it's very clear to me that, I mean, revival, I totally believe that revival is near in the nation, in this nation.
So what do we do about the war before the revival?
The war I didn't say, you could see the shaking. So amongst the shaking and amongst the darkness, and there's tremendous darkness in the land, but also there's glimmer, there's light too, that's perking through. That's what I think is going on. You mentioned the race issue, okay, in the nation. Can I touch on that?
Yes.
Back 3 years ago, now I'm telling y'all more stuff. I don't know why I'm telling you.
You're at home.
I'm
you're
spilling
dealing
my
with
guts. I'm telling y'all things I've never told anybody. I mean, really. But the Lord began, and this would have been at least 3 years ago. I kept telling Angela this. I said, honey, and I'm watching all the race junk on television and all the stuff. And I went, that's not real. I said, the healing, what God is healing 400 years. The healing has begun. And that's what I believe, that the races, the root, 400-year root that's been in the ground is now being plucked out. I believe that. God's healing the divide.
Along that line, one of the issues that we still have to deal with in Alabama is the poverty that exists in so many areas, and in particular for large sections of the African American population. And this is something where I'm wondering what plans do you have, what ideas do you have, saying how do we get wealth to increase for more folk, and it's more inclusive increase of wealth? Because I don't believe that government distribution of money is going to, that's just giving you enough. It's not going to make you well off. You need to take the risk of starting business to do that. What are the ways that we can see that, especially in areas like Selma, there's 20% unemployment, and other parts of the
All right, so that's where I live basically. Like, I'm on my wife's from Lowndes County.
Okay.
She grew up in Hayville.
Yeah, well, you know what's going on down there.
I know that I live in Greenville. I'm in Butler County. The Black Belt's basically where I live. Okay, I'm not from.
We made 60 minutes on that. Alabama's got to be known more than for football
That's right.
teams. We need to be leading the nation in more things, and we are behind. And what you mentioned, I didn't know you lived in that area. 60 Minutes did a number on what's happening down there, the infrastructure.
In Mosses.
What are we going to, and from what I understand, I talk to people and I get to that question because there's a bunch of questions I told y'all I got, but the thing about it is right there in Lowndes County there, the sewer that 60 Minutes did this year.
It's called Mosses.
Mosses?
Mosses, that's right.
All right, and then I understand that there are a few construction folk that are down there, that money has been sent, but you got people that are skimming the money.
They are.
So you're gonna acknowledge that is.
I know, it's true.
That's what I heard, the money's been given, but it's not getting to the people.
That's the work you do, isn't it?
I don't know, sure, I build bridges, but,
Okay.
no, but what the skimming, all that going on over there, I know it's true. It is true.
And you remember what happened in the 50s with, down there was it near Dothan, and one of the most corrupt areas that we had in our state. Our state is led in a lot of negative things, And it's time that we need to bring something positive. So therefore, as he's talking about this, one of the issues I bring up is that government handouts don't work. You're giving people a fish, but you're never giving them opportunity to improve their lives. And that's something that's vital, that's got to happen to any oppressed people. Give them opportunity. Don't just give them food. So these are things that Father mentioned, if I can just go through a few things on this. On this particular stuff, talking about infrastructure in rural areas. We need to improve those areas. How do you propose, as he's suggesting, to improve in rural Alabama And we've got healthcare that's not good there either. How do we improve those areas with the infrastructure where sewers come across there? The Black Belt is some rich soil. There's a lot of stuff. Even our federal representative is, I don't know that they're getting, because I see them pushing for more national stuff. And I've heard you talk about concerns about national, but let's bring it back home. Back to the question he's talking about here. What can we do in that area where you live? Provide opportunity and fix some of those infrastructure problems.
Education number one.
Okay, we're at the bottom on that, routine.
Now, let me tell you how.
But we put, how much we put, 87 cents of all our money goes to education?
Correct.
How are we still at the bottom after all that money going into education?
That's the point. But let me tell you, so on this, I'm on this whole school choice thing, the thing that I never could quite answer. I mean, if you're in Birmingham and the metro and the big city and Huntsville and the region, and even Dublin, where you have Opelika and Auburn and Tuscany, you got these regions where you have a lot of schools and a lot of opportunities and private schools and all that's going on. Well, if you go to West Alabama, you don't. You Lowndes, Dallas, Hale, Greene, Perry, all those counties down through there. And I couldn't figure it out. I said, even if we put charter schools, the problem is the infrastructure cost of building schools. And I was in a meeting, what's the gentleman's name, the private school guy?
Robin Mears?
Mr. Mears. And the thing that I couldn't sort out in my mind is, you take all these towns across West Alabama. It's one thing to fund operations of a school, a private school, a parochial school, a charter school. It's another thing to have to come up with millions of dollars and actually build the structures. Mm-hmm. That's the whole, it's not the operational cost, it's the cost of construction to build a school. And he says it's easy. And this is the first time I've ever had a good answer. Now, Father, you're gonna like this, so listen up, real good now. Mm-hmm. He says it's in the churches. You create church schools in Selma, the Baptist church. You already got the infrastructure. All of a sudden, they can get a charter or whatever, and now you have mom and begin a church school. They have the classrooms. You start with a few hundred students, and now those moms and dads can take that voucher, and you have a school at the Baptist church or wherever in these towns. Now we're not saying what gets away from you in the head, even me, was how am I going to come up with the money to build the infrastructure in the Black Belt? This is how you do it. Church schools. It was this other guy's idea, it wasn't my idea. He answered my question because I get infrastructure. It's one thing, and so now you're getting $5,600 per child in the form of a voucher, and a church starts a school. Everybody in town's furious at the local school, right? Because they're doing a lousy job. And they form a school at the local church, or one of them. And every town in West Alabama has, churches. Yeah, and of course Selma, somebody mentioned Selma, but I'm all ears, but that'll work.
That would work because you've got churches, and it doesn't matter if we get to the right thing about who Christ is, black, white, it doesn't matter. Churches could organize together, and let's recognize that the school system that we have in this nation, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, all were church schools before they became what they are. Exactly right. So that's a great idea, guys. Are y'all hearing what he's
lost their faith?
making sure that but making sure that we got an understanding, suggesting that we can improve our education system by, instead of trying to deal with the public school system, competitively deal with it by giving churches opportunities to compete for the dollar to build their schools.
To get the voucher. Because isn't it basically a quote, a private school? They get the voucher. Moms and dads all
get a choice.
They got so you got a middle school over here. Moms and dad, they're furious. Now they start snatching their kids out, put them in this church school, and that begins to put serious pressure on that school. And there's a competition factor. So that's how that was the only thing I couldn't figure out in my head until this little fellow who runs church schools said, no, man, the infrastructure's there in every town. And it's called church, and they got classrooms and they start small and then they add on.
You might want to take a look, when one of your trips to Birmingham, at the Holy Family Cristo Rey School, which is down here now in Birmingham. It is it's inner city, 98% African American, maybe 2% Hispanic, and since it started, just about less than 10 years ago, it has 100% graduation rate.
Really?
And 85% rate of acceptance into college.
Really? Where is it?
And it's
On the western side of town.
over in Ensley.
Oh, is that
Yes.
that the one we went to?
No, what's the name of it again?
Crystal Ray.
Cristo Rey, Holy Family Cristo Rey School.
It's a great school.
Did you go to Reformation Academy?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
And it's part of my order started that.
He's a
law of the
Jesuit,
school. I'm a Jesuit.
Yeah, but they
We
don't want
started-
to go out and mess up everybody's life.
Since the gate to get in trouble. But
Did it centuries before.
Yeah, but we have over 50 of these schools around the country.
Yeah.
And the story is the same from Los Angeles to the East Coast. We have two of them started up in Chicago, we have two of them,
Right.
and they're all over.
Was that Mavis Conway?
No, it's called Cristo Rey,
Okay.
which means Christ the King.
Right.
The original parish was Miguel Pro, Blessed Miguel Pro Parish. And as he was being shot by the Mexican government, he had his arms like he was on a cross and he yelled out, "Viva Cristo Rey, long live Christ the King." So we named it after him. And these schools are having the same kind of success everywhere. It's all inner city, mostly African American, some Hispanic. And there's not their cousins, brothers, and sisters in the public school are dropping out at 50 to 65% rate.
Right.
Whereas, these schools, 100% graduation rate.
And you can
every
make
year.
business deals with business leaders to get the kids to
Exactly.
go to work in a week,
One day a week,
to work
the
with business.
freshman Monday, sophomores Tuesday, and so on. For 4 days, the whole class is at work. The business pays the school's tuition. And the kids see the application of their classroom work in real life business. And the businessmen aren't just sort of giving them dumb jobs. They want those kids, they become very integrated into the business. And when you meet the kids, they have this confidence, this poise, they shake your hand and look you in the eye, and they can carry on a conversation with an adult because they're not only with other kids 5 days a week, they're with adults, interacting and doing real work and applying the academic exercises to work. This model is oriented towards college prep, but there could be similar models or models based on that to include in the Black Belt agriculture sections, people in manufacturing down in Montgomery at the Hyundai plant and so on. There'd be all sorts, the trades, all kinds of options, including college prep, that deal with the various economic needs and development that will improve life for folks who don't have another
So
outlet.
all this, all this becomes available if we create school choice.
Choice, absolutely.
So you can get your money and you can go over here or here or here or here. And then that's a execution process where people know what they're doing and how to do it in churches
And then competition begins to work. Now, the
Right.
Jesuits have been teaching for years, that's what they do.
500 years.
And so that's a good learning ground there. So for the education system, you're talking about churches giving choice and using churches as.
with prayer.
Of course, that will be.
With
in
prayer.
there.
Imagine, and read Bible verses over the intercom
Okay.
in the morning. Can you imagine such a thing?
And religion classes.
I agree.
Of course.
So you got an answer there, but yes.
So how do you keep government interference out of the Christian school?
But that's private, isn't it? I mean, that's.
It could
But
be-
you're getting government money, and the problem is always.
Well, we're back to Vitale.
Yeah.
All right, but Vitale's got to come down. Now, let me mention something. Y'all may disagree with me, but I have one person who does agree with me. Any of y'all know Jareggi? You know Philip? Philip Jareggi, he's a lawyer. He was Roy's one of his lawyers. I believe Vitale Engel is the root, not Roe. I think the prayer case, the prayer, school prayer, the attack on the children, which predated Roe by a decade or so. I believe that's the root. I think the breakthrough in the nation is in prayer in school, the prayer. Now, some people say Roe, and I get it, but I think it's Vitale, England. And Philip links that as well. I think that's in other words, the prayer is that the strongholds come down and we fall come back into an alignment with what our Constitution says, which is this issue is returned to the states. Now, some states won't, but many will revert to the pre-1962. And even though they did it, I mean, people continued to pray and, high school sneak around and say a prayer for a football game, but it would have been technically in violation of this illegal, unconstitutional court order. So,
I'm gonna drop a bomb before I go as a black African American man, real quick here, Jack. And I want to say to you this: when you get into politics, I don't want you to make this mistake. I think America has been so prevalent on the race issues that we're missing the spiritual ones. And so what's happening is we're fighting here and getting our butt kicked over here. They took prayer out of school, but they integrated school, right? So the integration worked, but then they removed prayer. Prayer stopped it. And so from my heart to you, just make sure I know we have race issues. It's going to be here forever. It's in everywhere. It's in Germany. It's in Russia. It's in Africa. Race is race. We're going to have those issues. But the one thing that we need to keep at the forefront is the spiritual ones. So I want to commend you on going in that route. And if you do win, keep fighting that route.
I will. Mike?
Well, let me just say to you before you get out of here, I do believe that fundamentally, if we keep the spiritual issue there, we can resolve the other physical, racial issues we got. Now, I want to go to land use taxes. Now, Alabama has some of the lowest taxes on all this land we got. Corporations got a lot of this.
Right.
Do you have any position you take on, can we increase, and we're a principal landowner here. We've got over 215 acres of land we have, and it's all tax-free because we've got it, it's church. But there are a lot of others like what is this called? Metco, forgotten what it's called. Right next door to me, my neighbor. They own thousands of acres out here, and the taxes they pay are minimums.
It's current use.
And so what I'm saying, we need to look at that tax base structure of what we've got, because Alabama still has low use taxes on the.
Well, other states, the flip is other states have higher
Morgan
property
Metco,
tax,
that's what it is.
but they don't have a state income tax. So when you look at tax structure, you have to look at it in total. If you go to Florida, they don't have a 5% state income tax. It's true their property tax is higher, but they're not paying 5% of state income tax.
Okay.
So when you have a review, a comprehensive review of your tax structure, you have to take it all into consideration. We do have, very low property tax. But we have a 5% income tax. Now, I'm for getting rid of the sales tax on essential groceries. It's time to
Agreed.
do that.
Did everybody hear that?
That's a $500 million giving $500 million back to people, okay? And put that in context. So the total revenue last year alone is growing about $400 million a year, total revenue in the state. If you remove the tax on essential groceries, food, not beer, but essential groceries, then you're gonna lose $500,000 in revenue. So in other words, your growth, all you have to do is flatline budget for a year plus a couple of months and you're slick. And so we wanna do that. They should have done it a long time ago, but they didn't.
I understand the special interest, certain municipalities are gonna lose a lot of income.
No, just the state tax, not the local.
Okay, you're not gonna,
Just
so
the-
we still would be taxed on our groceries, the city
At
tax
the local,
and
at the
the
county,
county. Mhm.
but not, it's a 4% reduction.
Well,
That's the
that's
state
better
tax.
than- Okay.
It's $500 million back. And say it's food, so it's everybody. Everybody buys chicken, everybody buys milk, coffee, and so.
But it's not fair to the low-income people to have to pay tax on their food. I think Alabama's one of the few states that, of maybe less than 10. that
There's only
tax
3 or
groceries.
4 states that still tax food.
That's right, less than.
It's crazy. That's right.
Okay, so, all right. What about rural health care?
What about it?
Yeah, I'm asking you,
It's
can we
tough.
do, it's a problem.
It's a tough, it's hard. It's not an easy answer. I mean, that's where I am. And we have, in Greenville, we have Stabler and UA, they almost went broke and the city passed a tax to help them, beef them up. Then now they've teamed up with UAB. And I wish I knew the short answer to that one. I don't. It's just, it's a money issue. And it's like the target, I don't care who you talk to. You can talk to 10 different hospital type people and you get 10 answers. My sister-in-law is number 2 at the Hospital Association. And she's been there 20 years. And I have these discussions with her, and when I get done, that's what she knows, hospitals. I don't know any more when I've ended the conversation than I started. They don't know. So, if you figure it out, I'm all ears.
Well, just like the other guy, the brother came up with something for the school system, okay?
And the one idea that some states out west use is to pay the medical school tuition. If the state, because you've got a wonderful medical school in the state college system.
There we go.
And if the state could say, for each year that you work in rural Alabama where there's a need, that will be taken off your tuition.
Right.
That would be one incentive that would be perhaps a little bit less expensive to the state since you already own the school. Wouldn't be paying Vanderbilt or one of these other big medical schools with lots of money. It'd be using UAB to stay here.
Which is what, they're doing that to some degree. That's what happened in Greenville,
But this would be, that's at the school level, in terms of the individual doctor, to have tuition reduced by working in Alabama for each year.
Father, why don't you take it on yourself and write me an answer to that and how to do it? That would be so helpful. I'm serious.
Yeah.
If you fiddled with that and thought about it, because it's a big deal.
So I went to Vanderbilt, and one of my
Why, you couldn't get
roommates,
in Auburn? They would let you in Auburn, so you went to Vanderbilt.
I wanted to study the Bible, so I went to a place where I could learn. And so, like the younger SEC.
Vanderbilt's a
schools
good
have-
fallback position. I get it.
I didn't want to learn the Bible either. And so, one of the things that one of my roommates was a med student there, And the federal government paid his tuition because he went into the Air Force as a flight surgeon. And they paid for his equipment in medical school, but then for each year he was in the military, 1 year off of his tuition.
We're
Plus
gonna
he
be,
got
we're gonna have
as an
to,
off- as a
we're gonna have to
captain.
be doing that with nurses at the rate they're dropping out.
Yep.
That's the same thing in nursing is the same thing you're watching in teaching.
Absolutely.
I mean, the numbers are just, it's crazy stuff.
Pastor Mike, there was something I think you wanted to ask a question. or do you
Kind
mind?
of getting to understand a little bit. We're talking about the lack of health care in rural areas.
Mhm.
We're talking about the lack of care or facilities. What are we talking about? We're talking about insurance?
See both of you.
Facilities, infrastructure,
Yeah, so
facilities.
people in the rural areas they do have access to the same healthcare products.
They're closing down though.
Okay, but
You have
that's-
hospitals.
I get it. That's what I was
that
trying to
You have
understand.
hospitals and communities, these small, that are hanging by a thread.
Got it.
Okay, and then all of a sudden somebody has a baby, they gotta drive to Montgomery.
I see.
Or wherever, or maybe they're in Perry County, they gotta drive 45 minutes to Selma. Or something like that, so it's a big deal, but it's not the whole healthcare thing is a bullet.
Tim, one thing, I've listened to each one of the candidates and some of the things that they're saying. Most of them are talking about against Joe Biden, what Joe Biden is doing. I'm concerned about the issues that happen in Alabama. And most of the candidates are talking
Well,
about.
they're talking about, I love Trump, I love Trump.
That's the kind of stuff that's
And I
going
like
on.
Trump, but it's kind of ridiculous. I listen to on Biden now, I got his telling 100 million Americans, if you don't take the vaccine, you're gonna be fired. Made me very angry. But, Ivy did the same thing. She did, Biden did nothing that Ivy didn't do on this regard. UAB told,
Yes.
it's not whether you want the vaccine or not. Is when a government says, if you don't take it, you can't work. You're fired. You can't feed your family. You can't buy or sell. You know what that is?
You know,
What spirit are we talking about? It's the Antichrist spirit. It's a controlling spirit. Watching it right in your face. So, Biden and Ivy are the same. They both did.
Excuse me, Bishop, we've got, I believe, about 2 o'clock. so-
Okay, I mean, that's understandable, 2 hours
And
is a
if
good
it's
time.
okay with y'all, when we finish, I'd love to get a photograph of everybody together.
Y'all might not want to catch a picture made with me. I'm a little rough.
Let me just say something before you go down that whole list you've got. So
Yes,
it
ma'am.
has really been refreshing hearing you speak and just to hear where your heart is. In telling us that the Holy Spirit is leading you means a lot to me, and I'm sure to them around this table. I do have a question regarding where you stand on police reform. I have a son who's a police officer, so that's very high on my list. So Bishop has those other 80 of them. But my number one is where you stand on that police reform.
Well, right now, and we talk a lot about this, the pay that police officers in certain districts in this state is atrocious. It's awful. We've got to bring pay up and benefits amongst all law enforcement, which allows you to draw more talent and the better talent. That's number one. And even in Butler County, and I didn't even know this, so you come up here, police, the average law pay is about $45,000 statewide, but you have police that make it $31,000. And I said, how is that? It's a major issue there. I have and really my Angela, as much as my wife, at first more than I have a heart for law enforcement, emergency management, people with a servant's heart who don't make much money and do this. And I intend to do everything I can to help improve it across the board. And that includes benefits, and that includes, you can't expect a man or a woman to be sitting in a police car, barely making ends meet. And they may be in an altercation in the next minute, and they're sitting there worrying about losing a home. Was there another piece of
No,
that
I
question?
hear that. No, I hear what you're saying, and I'm in total agreement with that. Give them a big raise. Take care of them.
So you're not for defunding the police, then, of course, clearly.
No, I am for increase the funding and get their pay up to normal. I'm not even talking about fat, I mean normal.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Take care of them.
equity across the whole state.
They're called to be ministers, so they need to
They
be
are
taken care
public,
of.
I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you ask yourself, are you gonna do it? You're gonna go out there and deal, and have to deal, and you know what, most people agree with that. People appreciate police officers, most of them. And you get some idiots out there, but, most of them do. And yeah, you go, I mean, yeah, we always know, it's just like, yeah, you know, you always have issues, but that's a small number.
If there are no other pressing questions, I mean, we're recognizing the time that, yes,
I have one, I don't know if it's on your list.
go ahead. I'm yielding here.
Okay. So.
Yield to the gentleman from Pinson.
You fix it, yes, yes. I have heard, I think, on one of your ads addressing, talking about Governor Ivey and the gas tax.
Okay.
Can you quickly let us know what, if anything, can be done to reverse that?
Yeah, well, it's by statute or law.
Okay.
That escalation, you know, they have an automatic escalation clause on it that goes on forever, which is insane, crazy. I've never seen that before. That's got to come off.
Yeah.
What they should have done, look, I get it. I know what it costs, and I get that. So gas was about $1.80 when they passed the law. They put a 10-cent gas tax, and nobody really thought about it at $1.80. And then we're gonna build roads and all that. Well, the problem is, what happens when you go into an inflationary phase, which you will. If you look at a chart of gas or oil, it does that and does that. That's what it does. They should have, 10 cents was too much. They probably should have put 5 or 6 cents. If it got to $2.80, $3, it should come off, a trigger. If it goes back down. So when it's below, you got this extra and it goes into a escrow account to build roads and nothing else. Improve roads and bridges. That's not what they did. They put a full 10 cent on it, it stays on it. I would pause all the tax right now. And the reason for that, so the total tax, state tax, is about 28 cents. It's not that it's just 28 cents. It's that it's 28 cents on top of everything else everybody's buying, right? That's the problem. It's the weight, it's the additional weight of everybody. People are they're buying food and they're trying to make ends meet, and you just keep it up. So I would pause it by executive order tomorrow and just wait and see what happens. And then by statute, I fix it, and where there would be a trigger that where that, 10 cents was too much. That was 55% increase. I've never heard of a tax increase on a percentage basis of 55%. Should have been 4 or 5 cents. If it gets too high, it comes off, goes down, comes back on, and it builds an infrastructure bucket of money. That
Didn't
makes
they do
sense?
that with a special session? Didn't she do that like in the, I'm like saying, it's just some special call?
They rammed it through.
That's what I was-
Back in 19, I think.
Sure did.
Mhm.
And
And that was something I would not have expected that Republicans would have done.
let me throw, whoa. Hold on, Bishop. This breed of Republican cat they got, they're not who I am.
Okay.
Let me tell you what they did. I mean, they passed the gas tax. They passed a law called the Compassion Act which basically legalized medical marijuana. It is under the guise of medicine, which it is not. It's gonna put dope on the street. Y'all need to understand that. It is not about medicine. It's not about helping people. The Republicans are setting up a syndicated drug cartel to put dispensaries in every little town in Alabama and peddle their dope. And the people that get the license are the rich people. Gambling, they try to put 10 casinos in the state. You know who gambles? The poorest third put half the money in gambling. It doesn't work. And they'll say, well, it's going to create jobs. Yeah, but the social cost is greater than the benefit. So I apologize for my party, but I intend to take it back.
So we're back to the point, and McClure's not here, of taking back the Republican Party. You need to understand what that's about.
Well, there was a great, let me leave you with something a great Republican did. And this Republican, relative to the federal courts, and Mr. Arm says, I can see that, that means.
I mean, this sounds kind of
Go. Oh, we just talking about taking the Republican Party, making the Republican Party great again.
There was a, hold up, let me tell y'all something about this great Republican. He was from Illinois, and his name was Lincoln. And so the Supreme Court in the 1850s was referred to as the Taney Court. And the Chief Justice was a guy named Taney from South Carolina. And basically, the South Carolina landed gentry owned them. They were all, it was terrible. And so there was a Supreme Court case called Dred Scott. Dred was a slave. And so the Supreme Court, the Taney Court ruled effectively, I'm paraphrasing, they ruled that slavery, that neither the states nor the federal government in the territories could regulate slavery. In other words, what the court said was even if the Commonwealth of Virginia wanted to limit slavery, they couldn't do it. So the Supreme Court took that jurisdiction for themselves. Lincoln, this is the essence of Lincoln Douglas. Douglas would say, oh, this Supreme Court, they're wiser than other men. And Lincoln said, slavery's going to resolve itself one way or the other, but these 9 jackasses are not going to be the ones to do it. And Lincoln disobeys the Supreme Court order in Dred Scott. Now that is a Republican.
Okay. Somebody's willing to stand for what's right as opposed to what's politically correct.
So these people that I'm dealing with on my side of the aisle are the out of sorts.